They had entered this world together, two fragile lives wrapped in the same blanket of fate. Yet within hours of their birth, that fate was torn apart. In the stillness of a modest hospital in a small town, two newborn twins were left behind. The nurses whispered in shock as they realized what had happened. A mother had disappeared, leaving only a short note that read, "I can't care for them. Please give them a chance." The orphanage that received the babies could not keep them together. Adoption requests were rare, and separating siblings was heartbreaking but considered practical at the time. One baby boy was taken in by a wealthy couple who lived in a bustling city. They offered him a life of comfort, but one lacking in warmth. The other baby boy, his mirror in every way, was embraced by a humble family in the countryside. Their means were limited, but their hearts overflowed with love. As the years passed, these boys grew up with entirely different worlds shaping them. One attended private schools, dressed in tailored clothes, and learned to silence his feelings at elegant dinner tables where affection was scarce. The other played barefoot in the fields, learned to laugh even when money was tight, and was hugged every night before falling asleep. Neither of them knew that somewhere out there walked someone who shared their face, their blood, their story. They were two halves of a puzzle scattered by life itself. But destiny has a strange way of bringing broken pieces back together. And though decades would pass, a single envelope sealed with truth was waiting patiently to be opened. An envelope that would finally reveal what had been hidden all along. If you had grown up not knowing you had a twin, would you want to discover the truth, even if it could change everything you believed about your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The years rolled forward, and the twins' lives unfolded along opposite paths. Daniel, the one raised in privilege, lived in a tall glass apartment that overlooked the city. From the outside, his life seemed enviable. He drove expensive cars, attended exclusive parties, and had a career in finance that others admired. But behind his polished smile, loneliness lingered. His adoptive parents had given him everything material, but love had always been scarce. Daniel often wondered why he felt so incomplete, as if some invisible part of him had been missing his whole life. Meanwhile, in a quiet village hours away, Samuel worked at his family's small workshop, fixing tools and machines for the neighbors. His clothes were simple, his hands always covered with grease, but his heart was light. He had been raised on bedtime stories, laughter around wooden tables, and the kind of unconditional support that money could never buy. Still, whenever he looked at himself in the mirror, he sometimes wondered about the mystery of his birth. Why had he been abandoned? Were there people out there who looked like him? The contrast between their worlds grew sharper with time. Daniel had everything money could buy but struggled to form genuine connections. Samuel had little, yet was surrounded by warmth and community. Two lives, two realities, destined to collide, though neither of them could yet imagine it. One cold evening, as Daniel sat alone in his silent apartment, he found himself staring at an old photo his adoptive mother had once given him. It showed him as a baby, wrapped in a hospital blanket, with a faint handwriting on the back. Twin A. He had asked about it once, but his parents had dismissed the question with a vague answer, something about clerical errors. Still, that single word, twin, had haunted him ever since. And in the countryside, Samuel too carried questions, though his parents always reassured him with the same gentle line. Your birth mother wanted you to have a chance at life. It comforted him, but deep inside, he felt there was more to his story than anyone was willing to say. Neither of them knew that the silence surrounding their past was about to break. Because somewhere between Daniel's lonely high-rise and Samuel's warm but modest home, a letter was already on its way, carrying the truth neither of them expected. It was an ordinary morning when the extraordinary arrived. Samuel was returning from the workshop carrying a basket of tools when he noticed an unfamiliar envelope tucked into his mailbox. There was no return address, only his name written in a careful, almost trembling hand. Curious, he tore it open right there on the porch. The words inside made his knees weaken. You don't know me, but I believe we share the same beginning. My name is Daniel, and all my life I've carried the suspicion that I had a twin. A hospital record I found mentioned Twin A, and I think that was you. If this letter has reached the right person, then we are brothers. Please, if you feel ready, write back. I've been searching for you. Samuel read the letter again and again, his hands shaking. Could this be real? Could the emptiness he sometimes felt, the questions that had haunted him, finally have an answer? He rushed inside to show his adoptive parents. They were stunned into silence. His mother's eyes filled with tears as she finally confessed what she had kept hidden for years. Samuel had indeed been born a twin. Meanwhile, Daniel was waiting nervously in his apartment, staring at the city lights. He had taken a risk by sending that letter, unsure if it would even reach the right person. He had tracked Samuel down through fragments of adoption files, whispers from old hospital staff, and hours of searching. For weeks he had debated whether to mail it, afraid of what the truth might bring. Days turned into nights, and then one evening, an envelope appeared in Daniel's mailbox. His heart pounded as he opened it. Samuel's handwriting was simple, but his words were powerful. I don't know how to start this, but yes, I think you're my brother. I've always felt something missing, and now I know why. When can we meet? In that moment, two lives that had grown in parallel, never touching, suddenly bent toward each other like magnets pulled by destiny. But as much as both longed for their reunion, they couldn't ignore the flood of emotions that followed. Would they truly connect after decades apart? Would their differences create a bond or a barrier? The answers would only come when they finally stood face to face, and that moment was now closer than ever. The meeting was set in a quiet park halfway between the city and the countryside. Both men agreed it should be someplace neutral, open, where neither would feel like a stranger in the other's world. Daniel arrived first, dressed in his usual tailored coat, his polished shoes crunching against the gravel path. His hands wouldn't stop trembling. He had closed multi-million-dollar deals, spoken to packed rooms, faced challenges most men feared. But this was different. This was his own blood, his reflection waiting to step into his life. Samuel came shortly after, walking slowly, his work jacket still carrying the faint smell of oil and wood. His heart raced with every step. He scanned the park nervously until his eyes locked onto a man standing by the fountain. And then it happened. Two faces, nearly identical, met across the distance. Two sets of eyes widened at the same time, as though they were staring into mirrors that had been hidden for decades. Daniel's breath caught. Samuel froze in place. Neither knew what to say. Finally, Samuel whispered, almost to himself, "It's real." Daniel's lips trembled into a smile. "It's you." In an instant, the silence broke. They closed the distance between them and embraced, an embrace that was both foreign and deeply familiar, like recovering a piece of oneself, long thought lost. People passing by slowed down to watch, sensing the weight of that reunion without knowing the story behind it. They talked for hours on a nearby bench. Daniel confessed how lonely he had felt despite his wealth. Samuel shared how full his life had been, yet how often he had wondered about his origins. They laughed at their similarities, the same nervous habit of biting their lip, the same way their eyebrows furrowed when thinking, and they cried at their differences, grieving the years stolen from them. But as night fell and the park lights flickered on, a heavier truth surfaced. Samuel pulled a small folder from his bag, documents his adoptive parents had finally shown him. Inside were details of their birth mother, her name, her age at the time, and her reason. She had been young, frightened, and forced to leave them behind. Daniel stared at the papers in silence, his jaw tightening. "So she's still alive?" he asked. Samuel nodded. "Yes. And she never stopped looking for us." The weight of those words hung between them. Their reunion was only the beginning. Now they faced a question larger than themselves. Were they ready to meet the woman who had abandoned them, yet carried their story all along? The decision wasn't easy. Both men had spent nights replaying the idea in their minds, meeting the woman who had abandoned them. Would it heal the wound, or make it deeper? At last they agreed to face it together. The address Samuel had uncovered led them to a modest house on the edge of town. The garden was small but neatly cared for, the kind of place that spoke of quiet perseverance. As they approached, Daniel's hands shook, and Samuel laid a steadying hand on his brother's shoulder. "No matter what happens in there," he said, "we face it together." The door opened slowly. An older woman, her hair streaked with gray, stood before them. Her eyes widened instantly, her hand flying to her mouth as tears welled up. She didn't need explanations, she knew. "My boys," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My beautiful boys." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Samuel stepped forward and hugged her, his tears soaking into her worn sweater. Daniel hesitated, torn between anger and longing, but when her trembling hands reached for him, he finally gave in, collapsing into her arms. Through sobs, she explained her story. She had been only 17 when they were born, alone and terrified, pressured by circumstances she couldn't control. Leaving them at the hospital had broken her, but she believed it was their only chance at survival. For years, she searched, but adoption records had sealed their fates. All she had left was hope. Daniel's voice cracked. "Do you know what it's like to grow up wondering why you weren't wanted?" Her tears flowed harder. "I wanted you every single day. I never stopped. I never stopped loving you." The room was filled with a heavy silence, broken only by sniffles. Slowly, anger gave way to something softer. Forgiveness wasn't instant, but the possibility of it was real. In the days that followed, the three of them spent time together, cooking meals, sharing stories, comparing the lives that had been torn apart. There were awkward moments and painful truths that couldn't be erased, but there were also sparks of healing, of laughter, of rebuilding something long thought lost. For Daniel and Samuel, the reunion was more than just finding each other. It was finding the missing pieces of themselves. And though their journey had begun in abandonment, it ended in choice. The choice to embrace love no matter how flawed, and to build a family not defined by perfection, but by resilience. Because family isn't about never being broken. It's about choosing, again and again, to piece yourself back together. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below. Would you forgive a parent who abandoned you if you discovered they never stopped searching? Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what love is truly capable of.